to the Dignity Dialogue with your host, Joe Kittinger.
Hey everyone, Joe Kittinger here with another Dignity Dialogue. And of course, I'm with co-host April Johnson.
Hey.
We're excited to be with you again. And we have Steve Scherer, and he is with The Impact of Leadership. And it's a relatively a new business, however, founded in real life experiences, built within the context of building a real business. And I'm going to let Steve introduce himself and tell us a little bit about the business you're in and a little bit about your company.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. It's always fun I like collaboration. So collaborating with people that have like-minded, mission-oriented type mindsets, I think it's fun, regardless of industry. And even with competitors, I do that with competitors too, where we'll sit down and just talk. How are you doing? How can we help each other? That kind of thing. So thank you for having me. That's the first part.
Absolutely.
So I am I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I've got 4 kids. I shouldn't bypass that because that is a lot of the why behind what I do. My oldest is going to be 12 this year, and my youngest is going to be 6 in just a couple days. And so there's a lot going on, including 2 dogs, one that is super old and crusty, and then the other's a puppy. And so it was crazy getting them out to school this morning. So that's I mentioned that not just to bring levity to the conversation, but to fill it out that, like you said, that what we do with the impact of leadership it's from real life. So it's not just reading a book and practicing some sort of theory and then passing that theory along. So the impact of leadership, we focus on 4 really core areas, and it's to equip, connect, and grow leaders while having fun. And the way that we do that is through free resources and paid resources. Those are 2 big buckets. And the free resources is what we focus on primarily because everybody's favorite price is free 99. And so we try to bring as much value as possible to free. And so podcast, like many people, we have a podcast. Been fortunate enough to have that going on for about, I think we're in our 4th or 5th season now, which is wild to think about. And then blogs, weekly blogs, bi-weekly episode of a podcast comes out. And then we have also just encouraging messages that we send to like folks that are signed up for our email list and memberships through the Impact of Leadership. And then there's paid stuff like events and coaching and mastermind groups and small groups and things like that we do also. But it came out of a desire to serve. Everything that we've done with Impact of Leadership has come out of real life experience and a desire to serve. There hasn't been anything that we've come up with that hasn't been done by somebody else. There's nothing new under the sun. It's all been done before. So the reason that we did it was because it was out of passion, and we saw a need with some of our customers on the CCB technology side. So CCB technology is what my full-time job is. And I'm vice president of sales for a small business, and we are an outsourced IT firm, CCB technology is, and in a conversation with the owner about what I was learning, and was telling him I'm engulfing podcasts and books on leadership as I took over the team, 4 or 5 years ago. And then the podcast started and we stumbled through it, and it was a rough beginning. And 4 or 5 years later, now we have an actual business where we partner with local organizations and we do speaking engagements and things like that, just again to bolster those that are in the same kind of seats, that are leading teams, that are unsure what to do when COVID hits. And we deal with stuff like firing people and hiring people, and how do you lead well? How do you fire somebody with integrity? Like your own integrity intact and their dignity intact. There's a way to do that, but it's not easy. So lots of words to say. I'm a guy that just lives a normal life, that has a passion for leadership and doing things with excellence as much as possible. So
do you see why I love this guy?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Lots of words. Hopefully, there's a little bit of helpfulness in that.
Well,
That monologue.
and for everyone watching or listening, Steve and I had the opportunity to connect and talk for about 45 minutes to an hour or so, just to get to know each other prior to this. And April couldn't make that meeting, so this is your first time getting to know him. But do you see the synergy between our two companies?
For sure, totally connected.
Yeah.
He has a equip, commit. Is it commit? What was your second one? Equip, connect, grow, and have fun. We have inspire, empower, grow. And of course,
we always have fun.
We have fun. We bought it, a leadership bus. I mean, how fun is that?
Right.
Leadership adventures. Yeah. Steve, we bring people on this whimsical bus and we say, show up at this parking ride, grab your drink, sit down and be quiet. You're in for a ride.
So they don't know what they're getting into before they
they know it's going to be focused on leadership, but they don't know where they're going, what the venue's going to be. They just know they're going to be focusing on themselves. And getting after leadership. And so Danica, my wife, and I went to Disney Institute, and I was just inspired by Disney. Always have been there like 30 times. Yeah. And I said, how would Walt do a leadership company? Like, what would he do? And of course, we went to the big Floridian and what's it called? Leadership Institute, Disney Leadership Institute. And so that's what, they did somewhat of that. Like you'd pick a path, and then all of a sudden you'd see that in action. Like, it'd take you off on a bus, and there'd be 3 different groups, and there'd be 3 different buses, and you'd learn about something, but you could choose your adventure, right? Whether you wanted to go underneath the Magic Kingdom and see how they run operations, go to the clothing place and see how they treat their own cast members when they're getting clothed, which was the size of a Kohl's department store. It was amazing. But that's what, the similarity between our journeys is so important. And I think a main message before we get into some of these other great subjects that we want to talk about is that you were in a business, CCB Technology, and you still are. We had a marketing company. We said, why don't we bring people together and talk about servant leadership? You said, why don't we do a podcast and start talking about leadership?
That's right.
Really?
With no perhaps formal knowledge of how or what you're going to do, and then it forms. And I think that is the key message to any business owner out there, business leaders. The more you teach this stuff, the more you learn it. Have you noticed that, Steve? Like in your journey, like the more you have to do this podcast. Now you have to talk about it. So you end up doing research and talk to us about how much you've learned since you started. Putting yourself on the line to say we're going to have the impact of leadership.
Well, I'll do my best. I am thank you for the compliments as well. I do feel like there is a lot of similarities, synergy, and that's I like feeding off of folks that are doing similar type work, regardless of what their tax code is or their vertical, like I said before. So thank you for the compliments. But I do feel that same way of what you all are going for, the mission, the why, the Simon Sinek start with why kind of thing. But anyway, lessons learned. I do have a bend towards storytelling, so I'll do my best to not go too far.
No, storytell.
Okay.
This is how people learn.
Well, this will end up being a 4-hour podcast. You have to bring it to 7 episodes.
Well, you could summarize the story.
Yeah. That's where I struggle. Because I'm like, oh, and then this happened. So lessons learned. I've learned a lot about what I really am not good at pretty quickly. And the outworkings of that have been humbling, but also it's been refreshing to bolster my weaknesses with other people's strengths, because there's other folks out there that are wired differently than me that enjoy the stuff that I just find horrible. So a real example is editing. So we started the podcast, and in that conversation with Patrick, he's like, well, why don't we do a podcast? And I'm like, about what? I don't want to talk about IT. Like, I'm not an IT guy. I'm a sales guy. I believe in what we stand for, and we have a fantastic product, and it's guaranteed, and all this, and on and on. But I don't want to talk about that. And he said, no, leadership. So what we did is I just started interviewing people and trying to draw out their superpowers within their sphere of influence within whatever leadership aspect that they were doing. So if they have a great culture at their company, we focus on that, like with Riley Construction down in Kenosha, Wisconsin. They have a great culture. So I interviewed some guys about that. Or it could be an author from wherever, talking about how to build the leadership team that's underneath you and kind of give autonomy to folks. Anyway, so one of the things that I learned was I was very passionate about hearing people's stories and gleaning from that. So I learned, coming back to your question of what did I learn, I learned that is something that fires me up, and there's a thing that I've been wired, a disposition that I have that I lean into, which is tell me your story. I want to learn. And I do believe this is a John Maxwell-ism. If you're willing, anybody can teach you something.
Yeah.
But you got to be willing. Like that's a precursor. So humility. So then what does it take to learn? Humility and coachability and all of that. So if you have those attributes and you're willing and you have the humility and you'll ask the questions, you can learn. So selfishly, I have learned that this podcast had pure motives and has pure motives on serving those that hear it and that listen to it and that ingest the podcast and the content. However, a great side benefit of doing the podcast is that I learn constantly.
Yes.
From the people that are on. Coming back to the stuff that I'm not good at, editing podcasts, I hate it. Absolutely hate it. But when you have no one else to go to and you want to have a thing get done, I also learned you can figure it out. Okay. So Marie Forleo, I think her name is, her mom used to tell her, I think this is actually the title of her book. I haven't read it, but I've heard her on a podcast. Everything is figure outable.
Right.
Is what her mom used to tell her. And so that's one of the things that I learned. I wouldn't have put it that succinctly, but everything is figure outable. But if you don't care enough, then you're not going to put in the effort. So I put the kids to bed, 9 to midnight, 9 to 1 o'clock for an extended period of time, editing podcasts and just kind of fumbling through, reading blogs and other things from Gary V and other people that just push out how they do their stuff. But that's one thing. It's okay. It's actually really good to just admit that you're not good at everything.
Does that put peace of mind?
Yes.
Does that take a lot of pressure off?
It's for me though. I think part of the counterbalance to that humility is my pride, because I'm like I want to do everything. I don't want to burden somebody else, so I should be able to do it all. But that's just not realistic.
Right.
That's just not realistic at all. And another thing that I've learned is that you all will know this for sure. Vulnerability is attractive to people.
Uh-huh.
So when you admit the stuff that everybody already sees, they already know you're not good at everything.
Right.
They already know you're not you're not a superhuman. Admitting that is freeing.
Yes.
But it's freeing not just for the individual saying it, at least what I've learned, is it's freeing for the people that already know it. And now they can help you. And now there's this beautiful thing that happens of relationship and community. And so through the podcast, through the impact of leadership, through CCB technology, the stuff that I've learned has been transferable. It hasn't just been siloed for the podcast. It's like I learn this stuff, I see it, and then it goes home with me with my 4 kids and my wife. Mm-hmm. And I see it, I learn it, and it goes with the sales reps that I have on the CCB technology side. So I love it. I love it. It's challenging. It's a little bit scary. You said, what did you learn about putting yourself out there or something like that? I won't go too far with this, but I don't know if you've experienced this, but for me, the night that the podcast was going to launch, I was like inconsolable with fear and like the imposter syndrome was the loudest.
Who do you think
awful,
you are? Who's going to care what you have to say?
Exactly. So you know what I'm talking about. It's the same voice that anybody that's done anything that's worthwhile hears. Yep. I learned that so far, and maybe for the rest of my life, that voice will never go away, but it also shouldn't keep me from going for it.
It's exactly right.
And so other people that feel that way, I like to surround myself with people like that. And I also think it's really important for people that have heard that have felt that, to say it more often, because then that muscle gets exercised that this voice isn't going to conquer us. And then the people that report to us, that are around us, now they can replicate that and be served as well. So those are just a couple lessons. And it turns out that you find people that do care, and not everybody cares about the content you put out.
That's right.
So that's fine too. But the the percentage of people that do hear it, that do latch onto it, there's value. And so those are some lessons. Because we don't have, the podcast isn't monetized. I should say that. We talked about that. Joe and I, you and I talked about that it wasn't a money motivated thing of why we launched into this. I know that's the same for you guys.
Yep.
And I think when you do things like that, sometimes the money follows.
That's right.
But we also had to surround ourselves with people that are like, knows what they're doing with monetizing it, because we had no idea.
You can't monetize it until you have some sort of meat.
Yeah.
Someone said to me, you can't replace personality with expertise.
That's good.
So true.
And so my point is, how you started and how we started, we couldn't become experts in our field had we not jumped in, completely, I don't know, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Because for 12 years, we never monetized anything when it came to leadership. It was just learning. It was putting stuff together. It was seeing what's missing. It was until you grew your expertise. And then when you find your niche of expertise, which we've interviewed folks on Imposter Syndrome, that's their expertise. Humility, vulnerability, like Brene Brown, vulnerability, that's their expertise within the leadership model. Now, that's interesting because the amount of effort and research, an individual puts into those niches.
Well, and it's beautiful because you also, and you talked about this a little bit ago, Steve, when you realize that you don't have to know everything. You just have to be open to sharing and being vulnerable and allowing others to teach as well. And so, using things like Brene Brown's, idea on vulnerability, we don't have to have a new way of being vulnerable. Brene Brown has done incredible research. She's done a wonderful job, but we can bring it to the masses. We can bring it to whether it's our clients, our world, our environment. We can bring that in unique ways.
Absolutely.
That work really well for them, but I don't have to necessarily be the next expert.
Exactly. Yeah. And when we say we're not inventing anything new, well, what is new is you, Steve, is you, April, is me. Like, people connect with people. Yeah. And how we share the information will always be unique. We're not just saying, hey, let me read this paragraph to you on vulnerability. Let me read. We take it, we interpret. It's like a songwriter. There's been hundreds and millions of love songs written. But why is it you love these 5?
Right.
Because the way they interpreted love speaks to you. The way we uniquely interpret leadership connects with people in our world. And everyone's ready at a different time to listen to this information.
What are, for you guys, what are some top lessons that you all have taken away? 12 years that's a long time to be in it. So what have some top lessons that you all experienced?
That's a great question. You got anything come to your head right away?
I think probably the biggest lesson that I've learned is the life that I have lived is not just for me. It is
it's good
to teach others. So the things that have happened in my world, in my history, and my story is for me and others. And the more that I share, what I learned is that the more that I shared my story, the more impact I could be for people. The people could relate. People would say, "Oh my gosh, I did not think someone else walked through that, or felt like that, or wasn't sure they could do that." Right? But I had to first reveal it. I had to first share it. I had to be open. I had to be honest. I had to say to people, "Hi, hello, I'm April. I'm a hot mess. Like, here we go." and I have some things to say, and people listened because I was vulnerable. So I think the biggest lesson that I have learned is not to hide who I am, what I've been through, all the other lessons that I've learned through life, because the best way that I can help others is to be honest and true to who I am, and live that out loud.
Yeah.
What do you think keeps people from doing that? From living that way that you just described?
From my own, I think for my own perspective, I'm sure there's other reasons, but for myself, it was a sense of worthiness. I don't know that I felt like I was worthy enough to say all those things happened and I'm still okay. Mm-hmm. And I think so for me, it was more of a belief, of a fear of not being good enough, not being enough. So, I have a lot of T-shirts that say I'm enough. And I use that statement a lot because regardless of what we're going through, we are enough, right where we are, right who we are today, we're enough. And we're often working toward being better versions of ourselves, yes, but in this very moment, we're enough. And I think a lot of people fear that the right now, who I am right now, is enough for people. Like this won't work for them.
Yeah. I also think that I'd say 2 lessons I've learned, because we have totally different upbringings and stories, was one, in a way, be true to who you are. I grew up in an entertainment family. I grew up with a lot of delight and enthusiasm, which I've been criticized for growing up. Like, you don't know what it's like. You grew up in this family that blah, blah, blah. I mean, my children feel that with some of their friends will say that. And it's like, we're just trying to help and listen. You're right. We don't know. And just to be, I'm a little quirky. I'm a little goofy. So stepping into who you really are and bringing that into the context of your subject matter, I think is really important so that you're super authentic. When it comes to, I think the biggest thing people fear in business too, overall, is money. I think people have been taught to fear money. And my coach, and I was guilty of that. I still have a program that says money's bad, that I was raised with accidentally. But money really can help people, and it can help grow and give people raises and help people prosper. But I realize, for those of you out there who might be struggling with, how do I charge? That's all with worthiness. Yeah. Am I worthy enough to charge? My coach said, all money is, Joe? And I said, what? Trust points. That's all it is. Every dollar represents a vote of trust. Mm-hmm. And what you have to understand is the more you share information, the more you build your trust, of which people will vote for you when they want to go deeper into what you know within their life, within their business, within this. And that really was a big eye-opener for me, to see money as nothing more than trust points. Because, and I think you mentioned it, do your good works now. Don't worry, but money isn't your focus. Money is the lagging indicator that what you're leading with is relevant. It has value, and I would say those are what I've learned on my journey.
There's 2 things that come to mind. One's more of a funny anecdote of lesson learned, but the second is actually the first one that I'll say, because that's more pertinent to what you just mentioned. You talked about a coach a couple times, and I think an important lesson to not bypass is you're never beyond having a mentor or a coach.
Right.
My mentor that I've had for a while, he turned 70 this past November, and he himself has just gotten another mentor.
I love it.
And I'm like, how does that work? It was a great conversation, because the stereotype is that you got to find somebody that's 20, 40 years ahead of you, whatever.
Right.
Well, there's not somebody 40 years ahead of him. It's not gonna happen. So actually, the short version of it is, it was just a guy that is slightly ahead in an area of life and is a little bit older than him, but he sees that guy as a mentor in that area for this season of his life. The other thing about my mentor, so I think coaching and mentorship is enormous. Mm-hmm. Like, you should not bypass that. Yes. You should get that. Do the work. Do the internal work. Have somebody that points things out to you that stings. Wounds from a friend can be trusted. I believe that. My mentor has poured into me in some of the most significant ways of any person in my life. That's period. When he isn't around anymore, when he passes away, because it all comes for us eventually. When that happens, there will be a significant feeling of loss, not just because of the person, but because of the value that he implemented. And because of what he's done, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Joe and April, with coaches and mentors that you have, you want to be that for other people then.
Yes,
it
absolutely.
stokes something inside of you. So it all kind of feeds together of the cyclical thing of when you give, you want to, or when someone gives to you, you want to be that for other people.
That's right.
And he says too that, yeah, let the benefits of what you've done on the inside, so your internal life, the external benefits of that, let that follow. Don't chase the external benefits first. Do the work internally first. So he coaches football teams, and he always says, I want our winning to be a result of our practicing, not the other way around. Like, don't chase the winning. Pour into the practice, because the winning will be a result of that. The second thing that's a little more funny, lesson learned, and then we don't have to stay here, but I gotta tell this one. For about 4 months, I was doing the podcast, and then we hired a guy at CCB side of things that's an engineer. He is the person that edits the Impact of Leadership podcast now. His name's Nico. Fantastic guy, sweet guy. Hey, would you ever want to sit down and just chat and see what your setup is? Maybe I can help. Oh, heck yeah, man. I don't know what I'm doing. Been stumbling around for 4 months. Let's meet.
Yeah.
So I meet with him. I set up the equipment, and he's like, is this how you set it up? And I said, yeah, just tell me anything. And I take a pen, and I'm like, all right, tell me. And I'm like about to write down the most monumental thing, I'm sure. And he goes, well, the first thing that I would suggest you do is, well, I said, just tell me, man. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to, it's fine. Just say it. He's like, well, see on the microphone here, it says back. I'm like, yeah.
I turned it around.
It was facing the wrong way for 4 months. It was facing the wrong way for 4 months. And the words, there is a word on the microphone that says back. But because I was just moving, just doing it, just whatever. Now the audio, because of microphones, and you all know this too, you get a good microphone, it'll pick up the audio. It's just, I didn't understand. I didn't understand why it wasn't crisp. So lessons learned, get people that know what they're doing and slow down, put the microphone the right way, stuff like that.
And a lesson that pops in my brain with your story is that ignorance is innovative.
Hey. Yeah, you don't know what you're doing, so you just
ignorance is. I mean, our first 10 years, and we still have, but my first 10 years with the company was, well, they want us to do this, and I would say, figure it out. No, you mentioned that. That was our battle cry. Figure it out for 10 years. Figure it out. I don't know. I've never been an advertising and marketing company either. This is new for me too. Figure it out. And as we innovate, and as we meet people like yourself, and as we meet other folks, and we show them tools, curriculum, concepts, built around common themes, but presented in a different way. And they reflect back to us going, how did you come up with that? I've never seen anything like it. I've realized that ignorance is innovative. We got a bunch of technology guys inventing, leadership tools who know nothing about that world. I mean, if you hired someone, let's say from, I don't know, some tech company that came in, they would come in with misconstrued ideas or framework of this is how it has to be, and it actually can hold it back. You're just producing the same thing that someone else has. But with our team, ignorance, I think, is innovative. Why not?
And I think new hires don't know. That it's a cliche phrase. You don't know what you don't know. Okay, duh. But the outworkings of that can be, why do we do it that way?
Right.
Hey, I noticed the door at the front of the office is locked. The right door is locked. Why is that locked? And then nobody knows. It's just the way we've always done it. What? Why? And it turns out that you ask enough people, and it's because the wind used to catch the door, and it locked one day, and they locked it one day, or something silly like that that we've experienced. But new hires, I have found, ask if they're given the autonomy to do so. and they have a leader that is willing to say, ask your questions versus just do it the way that we've always done it. I think that's important. New hires can be an extremely valuable asset with fresh look, fresh eyes, because we get into the trenches and we lose sight of
That's so true.
why we're or how we're doing things, that kind of thing. But anyway,
I like that.
yes.
I like that. You were we were digging, right? We were digging up stuff on you, and don't worry.
Bring it. You're not gonna find anything on Facebook or Instagram, so I don't even have those. But whatever's been posted,
Don't
or
worry.
whatever's been said, just go ahead, fire
I
away.
just loved. There was several times where you talked about an inspired leader. Being an inspired leader, and how do you see that different? I mean, how do you see that kind of standing out in terms of this idea of inspiration? I can tell you my number one motivation is inspirational. And so, of course, the word triggered for me right away. I spotted it, and then I spotted it and spotted it and spotted it. What's the difference? What do you think what sets that apart from other types of leaders?
I love it. I love it. I'm glad that you're asking this.
So if I understand the question, just say a leader versus an inspired leader.
Yeah, there's lots of types of leaders.
You're right.
And
a servant leader, an inspired leader
isn't necessarily one that you hear all the time.
Right.
That term. And so what do you mean by it?
Yeah, good. There's a couple things that come to mind. I think what's produced by a leader that also is inspiring to others. So, and this is just off the cuff, but I'm thinking back on leaders that have inspired me and so like my mentor that I mentioned before, his name's John. He is not a gregarious personality at all. So I do not think personality denotes or infers inspiration necessarily. I think it can be an attribute of that. But I think it's misconstrued when people just say, well, a charismatic person is an inspired person or they're inspiring. No, they could end up being a dictator.
That's right. That's right.
So that could be messed up. I think what is produced by that person is, to me, what I find inspiring. So inspiration then is beyond the immediate. A lot of times it's delayed gratification. It's a larger vision of a thing. So putting in the context of my mentorship relationship with John, he sees something in me for my kids when they're 16 and 25. And so that's inspiring to me, because he's not just dealing with me where I am now, but he believes in what I can be. And so the people that are under your influence, so again, John Maxwell-ism, leadership equals influence. So you don't have to have a title, but let's say this person does have authority and they're viewed as a leader in an organization, but they lack inspiration. I believe that you will see that in what they produce in their people, a lack of inspiration. I think the people reflect leadership. I think I accidentally just quoted "Remember the Titans." Attitude reflects leadership, or something like that. But regardless, I think that there's a distinct difference in what's produced between an inspired leader and a leader. They both could get results. How they get results is going to look different sometimes. So what does that mean practically? To me, I think trust is one of the foundational pieces to an inspirational leader. I think trust and accountability. And I do not think, and I'll actually I will add in there love. I think you can hold on to love and accountability. I think those can be true at the same time, and I don't think they're mutually exclusive. So the willingness for a leader to put themselves out there with their people in a way that is vulnerable is inspiring. But it also takes a risk, because you can get really hurt as a leader when you get betrayed.
Right.
The risk of betrayal is part of that. And the risk of having to fire somebody that you actually care for and you care for their family. So internal work, the inside game before the outside game. I've referenced them 100 times already, but my mentor has said, when I've asked, where have you seen people fail? most often. And he said, I've seen folks fail most often when they are more concerned with how they appear to people than how they really are. And I think that inspiration is lasting after the person is gone. So it's beyond the immediate.
I love
So
that.
what is feeding you? Your inputs. Is it just YouTube? Is it just a cyclical thing on Facebook? Is it just this echo chamber of people telling you what you want to hear? Are you expanding your horizons? I think there's a lot of different things like that. I also think it really, really matters. It really, really matters if we pause to let people give us feedback that doesn't feel good. I think that can fuel inspiration. I really, really
That's
do.
good.
Because a blind spot is what it's called.
Yeah.
And you can't see it. You don't know it's there. So,
Or you see it, but you're not
Yeah.
you're not admitting it.
sure,
There's,
it
there's some
could
of
be.
that
Yeah,
as well.
I think so. I think this is not necessarily in line with what you asked, but I think pride is extremely crafty,
Yes.
and I think pride erodes trust.
Mhm.
And if trust is eroded, then what are you standing on?
Right.
So a person that is inspiring to me is a person of integrity, is a person with a servant's heart, is a person that not 100% of the time exudes energy and is always wanting to take the world, by the tail or whatever the expression is, but a person that is consistent over a long period of time is inspiring to me, and that lives out the simple stuff.
Mhm.
Like they have relational congruence. I've heard that phrase before.
Love
They
that.
are who they are.
Mhm.
Tell me that quote again that from your coach, that people fail most when they what?
When they're more concerned with their outside life than their inside life.
Oh, okay.
So their internal, so basically the external view. So they're more concerned with how people view them versus how they really are.
Okay.
Yep. So one of the examples that he gave me, there was just a guy that was uber successful by standard terms, had a business, made a bunch of money, won some awards, whatever, and then believed it that he was his own, God's gift, kind of a thing, and then the things that I would say are way more important than awards and accolades and likes on LinkedIn and money. His family crumbled.
Yeah.
Made some not too wise decisions. Family falls apart. And so what's produced long term?
Right.
And then the business. Oh, you took some shortcuts here. Now people are sniffing around. Is he a man of integrity? I don't know. And then the business falls apart.
It reminds me of a story. As when I was a young business person, I went to the funeral of a gentleman who was probably in his 60s when he passed. His name is on some of the buildings in Green Bay. And I went there because I'm ancillary to the family. Like I just wanted to respect them from a business point of view. Not that I was super close, but I went up to this teenager who I knew was a child. And I just said, I said, I didn't know your dad well, but I'm very sorry for your loss. And he said, I didn't know him that well either. I was like, whoa. Wow.
Yeah, not that. I don't want that.
You don't want that. We don't want that.
No.
I know you guys don't. I know the pair of you and what you stand for. You don't either. You don't want that either.
No.
But I think there's a word. So, side note, and then I want to know what you think is inspiration before I go too far. And I don't even know how long we've been talking, but I want to hear from you all. So, very, very quickly, it could be good for the listeners. It's been great for me. Took it from somebody else, but I pick a word to focus on every year. And so again, I did not come up with this, nothing new under the sun, but I pick a word to focus on for the year. And I told Patrick about it a while ago. And so he then broadcast it to CCB. So the whole company does it. And then everybody sends their words to Patrick, and then he puts all of them on a slide when we do our company kickoff at the beginning of the year. And so every year, we've done this for the last 4 years. And so clarity, effective, last year was prioritize, and this year my word is father, which is so much different than the others.
Right.
But and there's a lot that goes into that. But I think picking a word to focus on for the year is a good exercise because it's a lens to view things through. And intentionality is something that I think is very, very important in parenting, in leading well at work, and surrounding yourself. You're not going to accidentally surround yourself with people that are inspiring. You're not going to accidentally drift into one of the things we say on the podcast all the time is nobody drifts into excellence. That's only in Disney movies that you drift into a lagoon. That's a good thing. So intentionality, that's a word that came to mind as we were talking about, kids and billboards and that kind of thing. But what do you all think is inspiring? What do you think is inspiration? How would you separate that out?
I think for me, inspiration is about authenticity. It's about being real. It's about being who you are. Kind of a side note, I do have a word. I pick a word every year, similar
nice.
to what you do. This year, my word was self. And I think it's kind of that's kind of where I am. I think as a leader, we get into this routine of making sure that we have everything for everybody else. We want to make sure that we are leading well for our people, that our people have what they need. We're putting out fires. We're, all those kinds of things. And we often forget that we can't be great leaders if we are not taking great care of ourselves. And we can get lost kind of in the shuffle of that. And so this year, my word is really about self and really doing the internal work, taking the breaks that are necessary, spending, whether that's spending time with my family and spending present time with my family and not feeling guilty for spending present time with my family, things like that. So that's kind of where I see, for me, inspiration is an internal thing. There are many things that inspire me, and most of them are very quiet. They're very quiet and still moments. I'm a person of faith, and so I think it's very connected to my faith. I am pretty extroverted and all that kind of stuff, but I recharge and I energize in quiet. And moments of just stillness, bringing more of that back into my life. I'm hoping is what 23 is gonna look like a little bit for me. And so, because when I can have those moments and I can have those opportunities for myself to really see the beauty in how I've been created, to see the funny, the quirky, like all those things, taking the time to see that, then I feel like I can then see that and recognize that in other people easier. And so even if they're a mess, even if they're hard to deal with, even if they're a struggle, I can see that they were created so beautifully and that there's greatness within them, and that's kind of been my thing for a long time, just looking for the greatness in people. And I think over the last couple of years, that's been a little bit harder. Quite frankly, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but I want to get back to that, being able to see that. And for me, that is inspiring to me. I love it. I mean, I'm sure that's part of why I love what I do. I mean, I love what I do.
That's great.
To get to do what we do every day, is such a blessing. It's sometimes overwhelming to me.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, I guess inspiring to me is inspired to see what other people can do. So I used to be more of a controlling natured person. Like I would have my hands in kind of everything. And last year I made it a point to not just delegate, not just that broad spectrum of delegation, but to really, if someone has an idea, say, run with it, see what happens. Go for it. You got this. I just got an email today from one of our profiteers saying we should really reach out to this person and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, awesome. I introduced them. You guys run with it. See what happens.
Yep.
Instead of me running off and doing all this stuff, and then that person comes back, I know will come back and go, that felt really good. That felt really awesome that I did, that I was able to do that. And so just knowing that people are internally so talented and willing and fired up to want to be the best they can and to just foster that and just say, go do it then, try this, try that. So that to me would be what I would think
It's good.
would be inspirational is seeing the strength in others. You're right. We have been talking now for almost an hour.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
Good
goodness.
luck editing this one down.
Yeah, this has been so great. We just want, folks can, tune out whenever they want, so we believe more information can be good information because people can fast forward, they can back up and hear what they need to hear. But we will wrap this up. You've been such a wonderful conversationalist. You've inspired us, I know, here. Thank you for bringing us along on the conversation. I think that was really, really meaningful and cool to get to know you. You certainly have an authenticity about you that can't be duplicated. And so why don't you share with our folks, if they want to, connect with you or just follow you, like where are you? You're not on Facebook or Instagram, apparently.
No. And I got rid of those a long time ago. That's on my own personal thing. But so thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure. I enjoy these types of conversations, and it's just so easy for me to lose track of time. So I apologize for going so long.
Great.
No apology.
If people want to check out what we're doing, what we're about, it's pretty easy to find us. So just about any platform that you look for podcasts. So Spotify or Apple or Google or Stitcher, things like that. Just type in The Impact of Leadership and we'll pop up. It's orange and black and gray logo. And there'll be a bunch of episodes that people can check out. They're almost all interview style. And then theimpactofleadership.com is our website. And then there's like community resources, and the podcast is on there as well. There's stuff about events that we hold, things like that. And then LinkedIn, that's where social media wise, that's where I personally live. That's the only social media that I personally have. And that's where I really love to engage with people as well. I like making introductions. So just Steve Scherer, Scherer. You'll find me really easy on LinkedIn as well. The Impact of Leadership is on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I have very little to do with that. That's mainly Patrick. But that's where you can find us, and we'd love to invest in people however we can.
Awesome.
That's
Steve,
so cool.
Thanks again.
What a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure to meet you and connect with you and share you with the audiences that listen to the Dignity Dialogue. This has been another session. Thank you, April.
You are welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you, Nathan, for running all of our tech. And
thanks, Nathan. You're the man.
We'll connect with all of you next month. See you, folks.
See ya.
This has been the Dignity Dialogue with Joe Kittinger. Talk at you later.